Not those folks. They're happy. But a lot of concern for both parents and healthcare professionals about sugar intake these days. Now, this concern has sometimes led parents being cautious about providing baked goods for their families. And January just happens to be baking month. So, registered dietitian Amy Reed joins us now with some ways to reduce sugar intake, and then you can still get your baking done.
Yeah.
Yeah. How you doing?
Good. How are you?
Excellent. So sugar.
Yes.
Sugar. I eat lots of it. And I know, I mean, not only is it a concern for obvious health reasons, but a lot of diets are now, the big cutback on sugar is pretty huge right now too. So how can we still get something sweet?
Well, I mean, it's still okay to use some sugar. Like, depending on what health organization you're looking at, the American Heart Association says like no more than like, I think 6 teaspoons a day of sugar, but like the World Health Organization says like less than 10% of calories or less. So depending on what your calorie needs are, especially for like growing teenagers, like they can have maybe a little bit more, like maybe up to 40 grams, especially some athletes that are burning quickly.
If you're a cross-country guy and you're burning through it.
Those kinds of things. But there are some things that you can do really simply in our baking. The biggest one that I always do is if a recipe calls for like a cup of sugar, I automatically go down to like 1/4 to 1/2 of what it calls for. And honestly, my family really doesn't notice
really
much of a difference. No.
Okay.
The other thing you can do is do fruit purees in place of some of the sugar. Now, I'll be honest, I have done some recipes where I've tried to add no sugar, and I've added some sugar back.
Gave it a whirl, but it didn't really work out for you.
Nobody was eating it. So one of the biggest ways that people don't realize is dates. You can use dates. Dates are a really highly concentrated source of sweetness. There's like in 2 medjool dates, there's 140 calories. There's a really good source of potassium, fiber, things like that, but their glycemic index is low, which means that it's not going to raise the blood sugar
well,
as
that's
much.
what I was going to ask you, because you've got natural sugars in some of these things too. But
So the big things we're worried about is added sugar. And added sugar are things like, you know, Karo syrup, the honey. A lot of people think honey's healthy, but it's still an added sugar. So is maple syrup. So is molasses, and so is like regular sugar. So when you see these recipes that say sugar-free, but they're adding honey or maple syrup, it's still an added sugar. But things like an unsweetened applesauce, pumpkin puree,
John Lomax loves some pumpkin puree.
Even baby food prunes can be used.
Stop it.
Yes.
Wow.
That can solve some other problems,
I was going to say, that's a brownie with catch you later
and
kind
then
of
the
attitude.
natural sugars and fruit and starchy vegetables and milks that aren't sweetened, that's all natural sugar. We're not worried about that. We're worried about the sugar that comes in processing. So the added sugar. So this is just to make a date paste to use to add to baked goods. You would soak dates in water. I would say at least like 10 minutes to get them soft. And then you can just puree them up in a food processor, and it'll make a nice smooth paste that you can then add to baked goods.
So how much, if say the recipe called for a cup of sugar, how much of that would I then use?
I would do 1 to 1. So like if you wanted to do 1/2 cup sugar and a 1/2 cup date paste just to decrease it, here's some muffins that I made. The original recipe, these are chocolate applesauce muffins. So the original recipe was 2/3 cup sugar, and I did 1/3 cup sugar, 1/3 cup date paste, and then there's like 1.5 cups of applesauce. So I decreased the added sugar by 1/2 in this recipe.
Okay, can I try?
Yeah,
can I try
you
one?
can go ahead and try one.
All right.
And it's going to be easier for consumers to figure out the added sugars in foods coming in 2020 because the new food label is going to be out. And I brought an example of it.
Talk about that.
So on the new food label, right now you have total carbohydrates, and then you have dietary fiber, total sugars, but it says includes added sugars. So that tells you how much added sugar. So like in these cookies, it's 10 grams of added sugar. But also just looking through the ingredients, because other things than sugar say that there's sugar in it. So like anything like invert cane sugar, brown rice syrup, like those are all added sugars. So you want to look for names that are not just sugar. And I have information on that on my website, Amy Reed Nutrition, that people can look at that.
Okay, and we'll get a link to your website up at local12.com as well. It's really good. Like, I need that. Like, I'm not a big, substitute dates for stuff kind of guy. But this is working for me. Amy Reed, as always, it's a pleasure to see you.
Thank you.
And we'll be right back.